Alright, so I do apologize that Emotions 2 didn't have any audio. I'm not really sure what happened in the recording and why there isn't audio, to be honest. Anyway, so sometimes I think it's better when I add the audio afterwards, and I might actually start doing that only because, one, I can draw faster without having to think about what I'm doing, and then I can also add more detailed commentary. But then I might actually forget what it was exactly I was talking about. So I don't know. I'll probably continue adding the audio as I'm recording. But anyway, so in this is a follow up to part one. And just in case you haven't figured out yet, they're labeled kind of weird. So expressions is actually emotions part one. So I'm gonna put that in the README file. I just forgot to add that. I should just change the name of it, but it's kind of difficult to do that. Having to re-upload it and everything. Right, so really emotions, like I said before, it comes down to the eyebrows and the eyes. And mainly it's the eyebrows. I think the eyebrows express more about emotion than anything else. Especially in like comic drawings or cartoon drawings. What you do with the eyebrows can just significantly change how the person looks. Of course, mouth expressions can help, but it's the eyes. The eyes is where most of all the telling is when it comes to emotion. Or you can say where all the showing is. I'm sure you're taking those tests where you just look at the eyes and you can tell, you try to tell what emotion the person has. I guess women are better than that than men. I actually just took a test and I only missed one. No, excuse me, I missed two. So I got most of the emotions correct. One thing I want to comment on, I might have mentioned it before, make sure that when you're drawing your eyes within the eyeball, that you cover a little bit of the top and a little bit of the bottom of the eye, unless you're going for a really more dramatic kind of expression. Typically some top and some bottom of your eye will be missing, or just the top and then the bottom won't be touching the bottom lid. It just depends on kind of how the person's looking. Often to save time in this tutorial or this course, I copy stuff and flip it over just because there's really no reason for me to redraw the other eye. It would just waste more time. And as it is, it's already a 20-hour course, so I try to save time and cut corners as much as possible to get you as much information in the most compact amount of time. But all this information is good, so you really don't want to skip it. You really want to watch all of it. So you can notice with anger, you kind of get this up-down look in the eyebrows. So the tip of it comes close to the eye, then it pulls way up and high away from the eye, and then down. And then mouths, you can add all kinds of mouths, and you can kind of change the expression by you can give them angry eyes and more like a smile, and they kind of look sadistic, and you can give them kind of a sad face and angry eyes, and it changes. You can give them angry face. And also remember, when you're doing comic art, you can minimalize too. You don't always have to draw lips. You can just draw the center mouth shape. Whenever I draw mouths though, I often like to start, especially if it's an expressive mouth, I like to start with that center shape and then add the lips to that expressive shape, and it just, I don't know, it makes it a little bit easier for me to draw the expression that way. If I start with that center shape of the mouth, the basic shape the mouth makes in that expression, then add the lips, the top and bottom lip to that, for me it just makes it a little bit easier, I think. Now, one thing you'll notice is this model is a realistic model, so it's based on a realistic face, and so sometimes the chin might look a little bit long, and the reason why that is because there's no shading. When there's shading and everything, then the chin won't look as long. Now, there's different ways to, if you don't plan on actually shading your character at all in any realistic way, or any way that would make the chin not look so big, you can do different things, like make the lips really big, like I just did, or you can just, like most comic artists do, is just, in cartoonists and stuff, is to cut the chin shorter, just draw it a little bit shorter and closer to the mouth. And so you don't get quite the same proportions of the face when you do it that way, but it usually looks better if all you're really going to be doing is line art, or line art and maybe just a little bit of shading, like not shading, but like cell shading, so kind of like anime, just have a couple little shadow marks and that's it. Then if you're going to shade anywhere, anything like that, you're probably going to want to adopt a style for your comic faces to that, so that the chin comes higher, so the whole face is shorter than it would be. So kind of just draw the face how you normally would realistically, and then just take the chin and raise up a little bit, and then you have more of a comic-y type proportion face. But it definitely does look better when you do it that way. I apologize, I forgot to turn my phone off. I know it does that a couple times in this course, and I do apologize for that. Hopefully it's not too annoying. Usually I try to turn it down. I should probably try to do that now. Let me go ahead and turn it on vibrate for now. So what I'm doing here is experimenting with different kinds of mouths that can go with the eyes that I made. So by doing that, you can really change the expression dramatically. By giving a sad face or a sad mouth to the angry eyes, it doesn't look as nearly as intense or nearly as angry as if you give them an open mouth, like I'm yelling, where you can see teeth and everything. And the person looks really angry. Another thing is, okay, so in comic books, right, like X-Men, let's say, they always try to draw well, not always, but oftentimes you'll see in these comic books, they'll try to draw realistic, because everything is realistically proportioned, so they'll draw kind of realistic expressions. They won't really exaggerate or stretch the face much or distort the face much. And they kind of go with, well, here's what a real person can do. And, Jack Nicholson can actually really exaggerate his face, right? I think that's why he's such a liked actor, is because he can get raw emotion on screen, and how he does that is with his rubbery face, his really, exaggerated expressions. So why is it if in a comic book people can shoot lasers out of their eyeballs, they can heal faster than anyone else, like Wolverine, they can fly like Superman, they can dodge bullets like in Max Payne, they can leap bounds, and if they can do all this impossible stuff, blow a car up with one bullet, which is impossible, then why can't they stretch their face? Why can't you draw their face exaggeratedly? Why can't you draw their mouth just so gigantic it's impossible, it can't get that big? But what it would do on the comic page is express an emotion much greater than you could if you just give them more of a realistic proportion to their mouth being open. So I really recommend trying that out. Start stretching reality, because you're already stretching reality anyway in your comic book, right? People are already doing impossible things. So if they're already doing impossible things in your comic world, then why can't they stretch their face in impossible ways? It's just one of those things that baffles me. And I think you'll get a lot more emotion out of your characters that way, and you'll get a better reader response when you really pull these exaggerated expressions. So typically with anger, this would be the typical kind of angry eyebrow, or maybe even irritated eyebrow. Now, when you're drawing cartoon characters, you can draw the eyes a lot differently than you would if you're drawing like a realistic character. You can get creative with the shape of the eye. You can do kind of ovals or kind of squares, kind of rectangles. There's all kinds of cool shapes that you can go with when you're drawing cartoon shaped eyes. And what I like to show with the cartoon version of an expression is how exaggerated you can get it, and how much more raw emotion you can feel in that expression. It's like, wow, that character is really mad. And you really get this a lot in like Disney films. See, Disney's not afraid. They'll use realistic proportions, right? Their faces and stuff will look realistic, but then all of a sudden you see, that they just do these impossible expressions, but it's moving, it really gets us into it. We're like, that expression's very clear. Now sometimes it could be over dramatic, but typically the exaggerated expressions are good, especially like I said, Jack Nicholson. Just look at Jack Nicholson. I wouldn't think anyone would accuse Jack Nicholson of overacting, yet his expressions are powerful and they get you into the moment. His eyes are way too far apart, and sometimes I don't notice that if I'm too zoomed in and too focused on what I'm drawing. Like, okay, I'm zoomed in on the eyes and I'm drawing the eyes. I apologize for that background noise. It's very hot, and so I'm not going to go close all the windows, but it shouldn't be too much of a distraction. And it's another reason why I make my courses cheap, because one is I like to help people out, because I grew up poor and I didn't have any help, so I like to help people out. Another is because I don't go and make a professional quality video really, and I don't. Sometimes there's background noise. Sometimes you can hear my phone and stuff like that. I'm not like recording in a studio or something like this. But still, the quality of the teaching is the same. And if you're at a lecture, you might have background noise too. It just depends what kind of school you're in and the environment and everything. But you know what? That's getting pretty damn annoying, all those cars driving by. Hopefully you can't hear them that well. I do have a noise canceling microphone, but I think about closing the window just for this recording. But so when you're drawing eyes, notice if you don't draw them in the same place, something doesn't look right. It just looks odd, right? So to fix that, what we want to keep in mind is that the eyes should fit in the same place. So if the eye is touching or almost touching the skin on his left eye, or excuse me, to our left, his right, but our left. So the left eye there, our left, it's almost touching the inner corner of the skin there. So the right eye should also be touching that inner corner, almost touching the inner corner. And notice I have a little bit too much space there. That space shouldn't be there. I can't remember if I even fixed that, but it shouldn't be like that. It should be over a little bit more. So just keep that in mind when drawing eyeballs, is to pay attention, because it's really easy to make that mistake and not even notice it sometimes. And maybe if you like later on go look at it again, because you're so caught up in the moment and stuff and not paying attention, but you later go look at it and you're like, oh wait a minute, that don't look right, and that's why. So I just want to help you out and let you know why your eyes might be looking odd. So to get them to look right, just make sure that the eyes are in the same place on each side. So if they're almost touching the side on one side, make sure they're almost touching the other side. And if one is being halfway cut off, the other one should be halfway cut off, unless they're different expressions, like one eye is wide open and one eye is kind of shut. So when drawing like a really angry face, sometimes it's cool to grit, show the teeth being gritted. And so I have the teeth being gritted; they're being pressed together. And notice from that 3/4 view, you kind of have an overlapping of the mouth there on the right hand side, and that's important too. To even if you're doing a cartoon, you still want to add that kind of overlapping there because it looks cool. And this looks more correct. Where that lip is overlapping, see on the right hand side, you have that upper lip where it's overlapping the edge corner there. That's important. Okay, so this I think this part here is like an hour long. I have over 2 hours of expressions, I'm pretty sure. And it's necessary. It's not some things you really have to go into detail on to make sure you really cover everything that you want to cover. And I wanted to make sure that I had a very, very detailed course here on faces, because faces can be one of the more difficult things to master. One of the exercises you can do is that you can take a face and then just lightly erase the expression, the eyes and the mouth. The nose usually doesn't change much. And then slightly alter them. Maybe make one more exaggerated and give a different mouth to them. What you'll notice, you'll get different kind of expressions sometimes. Like you'll invent or come up with a new expression, like, oh, that looks cool if I have this mouth and these eyes. And sometimes you figure that out by accident. If you just simply erase what you have there and then start drawing again, and first add a different mouth. Like you're just like, okay, I'm gonna draw a new expression now, so don't erase everything, and then start drawing a new mouth, and like, wait a minute, you can still see those eyes you had there before. It's like, hey, those eyes kind of look neat with this mouth. That's a neat expression. So what I'm doing now is I'm just exaggerating it more. It's like, okay, before he was pretty angry, his teeth were gritted and stuff, but now I want to make him in an utter rage. So how do I do that? Well, I just exaggerate everything even more. And this is a lot easier to do if you have a more cartoon character, because you can do really cool, weird things that you can't do in reality. Like I can just give him a pinpoint for an eye, and then I can, just have little lines around his eye, or if he's crazy, I can even add swirls, or if he's being hypnotized, stuff like that. It's a cool thing you can get away with in cartoons. Now, notice that I make sure I put the pupils in the same place on the eyeball, about the same distance from the right side line, from the edge of the eye. That way, the eyes are looking not cross-eyed or looking odd. They're looking the same direction. So, now if I pull the mouth even bigger than it was before, I can really get an exaggerated kind of like, I'm super mad. And what's cool within cartoon world is you can really just pull the mouth outside of the face. You can actually just pull it right outside of the chin, where it overlaps the chin unrealistically. You're like, that can't happen in real life, but you can do that if you're working in the comic world, or if you're working in cartoon world. Of course, you can even try it in your regular comic, like X-Men. I don't think anyone would really care or think, oh, that's so unrealistic, if they saw Wolverine had an expression like this, where his mouth was extending past his chin or jaw. I really don't think anyone would care. It's like they already see Wolverine doing impossible things. Why is it going to be a big deal if you see Wolverine, have this super crazy expression? Of course, everything else would still be realistic. You would keep his face proportions correct. You keep his eyes more realistic, like his eyes are. You wouldn't make his eyes get all big like this, big round squares, because that's just not what Wolverine would look like. So you still want to keep the features looking like Wolverine, but you can extend his mouth like this and get a really exaggerated look. You can even open his eyes, beyond what they might normally open to. Just make sure you kind of try to keep the eyes looking like Wolverine. Even if people don't have fangs, you can kind of give them fangs when they're mad. You see this done a lot in manga, where the people don't have fangs. They're not vampires or werewolves. But when they get extremely angry, their fangs pop out, and it's like, hey, what the hell? But it just adds that much more to their anger. And if it's a common convention you use in your comic book, then people get used to it, and they're not going to think twice about it anymore. So notice that little up curl of the tongue, the tip of the tongue. You'll notice when people were yelling, ah, and like their tongue kind of curls up like that. So it's some little things like that to pay attention to when you're doing exercises for emotions. So like when you're looking at photos and stuff, just pay attention to things like that. You have to keep your eye open to look for little details like, hey, the tongue kind of curls in this way when someone's extremely angry and yelling or something. But look how much more drama, how much more impact and power that expression has than the previous one. The previous one looks like irritation comparison. Now, if you do it realistically, this is actually just a quick draw over of myself. If you do it realistically, it loses a lot. But still, if you really animate the face, kind of like Jack Nicholson, I have a pretty animated face. I can make pretty exaggerated faces. But if I were to take this same drawing and extend it even further to what I can't do, and just kind of stretch my mouth out a little bit more, or even give me a mouth kind of like the one on the left, that crazy mouth on the left right there, that huge exaggerated mouth. Even if I were to put that on that realistic face, as long as I shade it realistically, it's still going to have that realistic look, and in a comic book it will fly, it will pass. So just keep in mind, you can really distort reality when it comes to your comic books. It's not just cartoons that are allowed to do that. Right, sorry about that. I have a really busy household here, and yep, so gotta deal with kids and stuff. Right, so like I said, if you just exaggerate the expressions, you can get some really cool effects. Now, of course, you can get really comic. It just depends, and this all comes down to style. So if you take the concept of style we went through, you can apply that to your emotions. So that is sometimes, like some comics, mainly manga, I noticed does this, is that their faces will look completely different sometimes when they make a certain expression. So like they'll give this really silly looking drawing to the character, even though the character doesn't really look like that. Like you can still tell it's the character, but it's more like a baby version of the character or something. And so sometimes you might simplify your style. Like so when your character makes a certain expression, you can actually warp the eyes or something, and it could be acceptable in your comic world if you do it consistently. Just don't be afraid to try new things. So you can actually have the mouth completely going outside of the face, and that would be acceptable, like I just had there. Or you can kind of draw the face coming around the mouth. Just depends on the style that you're going for. It all comes down to style. So you can make stylistic choices, when you're doing expressions of your characters. But you can also, draw your characters a certain way, in a certain style, and that will give you certain freedoms when you're drawing expressions. So what I'm trying to say is, one of the things that could decide on your style that you choose for your comic book could be the expressions that you want to tell. So try drawing your character in some really exaggerated expressions, and then and you can actually develop some stylistic choices that way, going, hey, I really like this mouth or this eye, and then next thing you know, you have a whole different looking character. It's like, hey, I think I'm gonna apply those style choices to my character even when he's making normal expressions. So now you have a whole new kind of style to your characters, and how you develop that was through experimenting with expressions. So experimenting with exaggerated, basically minimalizing. Because sometimes you can just minimize the mouth, for example, like that. Like to see those mouths there are minimalized; they don't have any lips. So minimalizing could be something that you also take in effect even with their normal faces, like a normal happy face or sad face. Now you have a whole new stylistic choice that you made for your character. And you might like the more bubbly eyes or something, and then when they're making a certain silly face, and they're like, hey, those bubbly eyes are kind of a cool stylistic choice. I'm gonna add those eyes to every expression, to slightly squish them and stuff depending on the expression they're making. So you notice that minimalistic approach there could work for every expression, not just that expression with the mouth I just did there. Just bottom lip and an upper or a middle line. And it's kind of cool. And of course then that makes me have to rethink about how the chin should look. Okay, now I got to make the chin shorter so it doesn't look like it has such a big chin. And now I've made a stylistic choice that if I apply to every other drawing of that character, the character looks a little different. And so you can actually develop a styled looking character that way by messing with expressions. Even if you already had drawn your character a couple of times and it's like you're still in the creating stage, but you already have a good idea what he looks like, but then you start messing around with a certain expression or a couple expressions, and it's like, hey, I really like the way the mouth looks like in this expression if I minimize it. And then go, hey, what if I minimize his mouth everywhere? And then it's like, I kind of like this character. I think I might like him better with the minimalized mouth. That is not as much detail. Or perhaps, you exaggerate or distort the eyes, and it's like, hey, I like the way that looks with kind of slightly manga eyes. Like, think about when Boondocks was first being created, and the artist was creating Boondocks, and maybe he gives them more of an American comic kind of eyes, more realistic eye shapes and everything. It's like, hey, these characters are kind of cool, everything else is the same. They kind of have the typical manga shaped face or whatever, but changing the eyes would make a big difference. But then he decides, what if I kind of give him manga eyes, kind of more manga shaped eyes? It's like, hey, that's kind of cool. These characters are looking neat. What if I give him these crazy wild eyebrows that is just his own unique thing that you just haven't really seen anywhere? Then it's like, then you get Boondock style. You get this whole unique look to the characters, and I really love the look of Boondock's characters, the cartoon that is, not so much the comic book. But yeah, you just get really cool looking eyebrows and eyes and stuff. So mess around with eyebrows too. Don't be afraid to get crazy with the eyebrows like they do in Boondocks. You can add crazy points. See, I notice how here I'm adding some interesting shapes to my eyebrows. I'm not just keeping them standard, and it can add interesting effect. And just subtly changing the eyebrows could change the expression too when you're dealing with more realistic expressions. So you can have like one eyebrow slightly turned up like that, and another one kind of turned down. You kind of get this slight, sly look, or almost like questioning look, So now to save time, I want that same kind of eye on the other side, so I'm just going to flip it around. Make sure you don't put the eyes too close together, otherwise it'll look kind of weird. Don't want them too far apart either. Of course, that could be a stylistic choice, but I think that's a weird stylistic choice. It just depends. If all your characters have eyes too close together, I noticed there's someone in DeviantArt I just saw, and they did that with like all their characters, the eyes are really close together. And I asked, hey, why do you draw your eyes so close together? Like everything else looks really good, and this looks really odd, And they're just like, well, if everyone drew the same, blah blah blah. But I think that's a poor choice. To develop style, there's certain things you just don't want to do. And making the eyes too close together, too far apart, is probably something you just don't want to do because it just looks too weird. But it's up to you. If that's the kind of weirdo look you want, you can go for it. And I think it'd work fine for like one character, maybe like a really weird character, because some people's eyes are really close together, and some people's eyes are really far apart. They kind of look like fish. So if you really want one character to look that way, but if all your characters look that way, to me it would get tiresome, and I'd probably stop reading the comic. That's just me though. So that's something you got to decide on your own. So notice that if you just give a slight subtle look, you can get sadness very easy. So maybe you don't want to get as extreme as anger or anything like that. You kind of want to do something more subtle like sadness. It's really easy to pull off. You just kind of keep the eyebrows more straight. Don't make the eyes kind of a little droopy. Don't and make sure it's the top lid that's droopy, not the bottom lid. The bottom lid only pinches up, in certain extreme emotions like squinting, like they're staring at the sun's making them squint, or they're crying really hard, or something like that, or getting really angry, sometimes you'll squint your eyes. So squinting is sometimes a sexy look, you can squint. But just keep in mind that when you want to droop the eyes a little bit, just drop the lower lid down a little bit, not too much, otherwise they'll look too tired. And even she looks like she might be a little tired, you know, like sad and tired. So I might have dropped her lid just a little too much. So you want to keep that in mind when you're drawing sadness. Now, of course, you can really exaggerate sadness by making the outer eyebrow drop down and the inner part of the eyebrow go up, like I just had a second ago. That kind of S look, that is like really pouty kind of sadness. But if you stay with more of the straight eyebrows, then it won't look as sad. So that's one way to exaggerate the sadness, is how high you pull up that eyebrow. I'm deciding what kind of eyes I want to give the character. So if I go with more of a realistically shaped eye here, and also keep in mind like the angle of the face. So when you're drawing an emotion for a comic page, the angle of the face you choose can make a big difference depending on what emotion it is. Some emotions you might want to draw from the front perspective. Others you might want to draw from a quarter or a 3/4 perspective. That is at an angle. And it's typically the face looks best at an angle, and so typically you'll see. I just said typically twice in a row. Most of the time you will see an angled shot of the face. It's just the most pleasing, it seems like, and it has the most range of showing expressions and stuff. So if you just kind of take a look at comics and whatnot, you'll notice that 3/4 view is the more common view because of its versatility. Sorry, I was trying to think of that word. Because of its many ranges, basically. So notice he's kind of like sad, and if you kind of just keep his mouth kind of open, it's kind of like like maybe he's in the middle of talking, or you can kind of like kind of like he's moaning or something. He's just kind of verbally expressing his sadness, like sighing. And you can really exaggerate that in a more cartoon style. Of course, this style is different all in itself. It's kind of almost like a Disney style, but not quite. It kind of reminds me of a more complicated manga, so it's like a mix between manga and comic booky. Now, if you really squint the eyes really tight together, like they're just being smashed together, that same mouth expression changes completely. It went from a look, sound, right, to a just totally wailing. Now he's just crying his head off. So it's really cool how you can do that. So take a mouth, I'm telling you, randomly take mouths, and then just add other eyes to them. In fact, you can, if you have a whole sheet of expressions made up for a character, just erase the eyes, grab eyes from another face that you just drew of the same character, and plop them on there. And you'll be surprised at how many ways the mouth can look different just by changing the eyes. It's really cool. So I recommend trying that just as an experiment. It's really neat. Of course, for your exercise, it'll be the same as always. You're going to draw everything that I've drawn so far. And these exercises are probably going to take as long as expressions, but expressions can take a while to master, to be able to do from your mind. So take the time to really do the exercises. So what you want to do is you want to draw all the different faces I'm going to be drawing and have drawn so far in this lesson from the video. So draw along while you're watching if you want. Forward and pause it and just look at the expression and draw what you see. But draw the expressions that you see from visual cue, from the notes or from the pages if you want. But there's some expressions I just erase. You want to draw those too. That there actually aren't on your little sheet that you download, the samples, whatever. And so you still want to draw those ones too. And then after you have a bunch of drawings of all the expressions, you want to go and try to draw them from your mind. And I would maybe just stick with one expression at a time. Take an expression and go, okay, draw it a few times, by looking at a reference, and then draw it without a reference. You might get stuck and go, oh, I can't quite remember how this is supposed to look. That's fine. Glance at the reference for a second, and then go back to your drawing without looking at the reference, and draw again. And then after you finish the drawing, make sure you check it with the original that you drew to make sure it matches, to make sure everything looks right. And then keep going back and forth like that until you can draw the expression from your memory without having to check to make sure you didn't make a mistake. Everything looks correct. Okay, and as long as you can do that from your memory, then you've mastered that expression and move on to the next expression. And keep doing that until you can do all the expressions from your mind. And then eventually, after you've done all the 3 courses of expressions, the 3 lessons on expressions, then what you want to do is you want to go in and start inventing your own expressions. And at this point, you'll be able to draw any expression you can pretty much think of without any reference whatsoever. Because you'll be able to go, okay, I know these eyes kind of make this expression, and this mouth kind of makes this expression. Then you'll be experimenting and mixing and matching stuff. So this is kind of experiment here, mixing and matching stuff. It's like, okay, what if we give them a kind of irritated looking eye in one eye, and almost a kind of surprised look in the other eye? Well, the look completely changes. Neither expression looks the same when they're mixed together. If I gave both eyes that kind of irritated look, you look irritated. If I gave both eyes kind of surprised look, you look surprised. But when I mix the eyes together, something strange happens. Now he's kind of like, huh? Like, what the fuck? And I didn't actually cuss there. I didn't actually say the word, so this is still PG-13. I don't think I've cussed in this course yet. Maybe I have. And hey, let me know. Feel free to give me feedback. Please, I like feedback. Send me an email, neil.fontaine@yahoo.com. If you need to, just go to my YouTube account and my email's there. So, contact me and let me know if you think I've gone overboard at all on any of my courses or lessons. If you think, oh, you used too many cuss words, or you used a cuss word here, you shouldn't use any cuss words at all, or hey, it's not a big deal, use cuss words, or any kind of feedback at all you want to give me. Hey, this freaking rocks, and I'm so happy I can finally draw faces from my mind. You taught me more than school taught me, or I went to this university and the professor never taught me the stuff you taught me. Whatever it is you want to tell me. I'm only saying that because I actually get those kinds of comments a lot. And I love them. I love hearing those. That's what keeps me going. That's what makes me want to keep doing stuff. My free tutorials and my really low and expensive courses. And thank you everyone for purchasing it that have purchased it so far. So notice that face there. If I kind of open his mouth a little bit, now he's kind of like, huh? But before it's kind of like, what the? Now it's like, what? So just by changing the mouth a little bit, you almost, because we kind of visualize certain sounds with different mouth expressions, and this is really important for animating. So I really recommend taking an animated course and or getting the book. I forget the name of it right now. I mentioned it before, but anyway, and to really pay attention to what he says about how to animate voices and expressions, like what to hit on and not hit on. And just by knowing that, the different expressions that, the key frames for different sounds and vocals that we associate with different sounds, you can really add that to your comic books. And with just one expression, you can the person can almost hear the sound they're making. And that's really cool to have in a comic book. Also, a trick I've shown a couple times is like draw the eye first, draw the pupil and the iris together, and then draw the lid over the eyeball, depending on how droopy you want the eye or how open you want the eye. Notice by actually drawing the lid itself, not just drawing that upper line for the lid, but drawing the whole entire, what do you call that? That whole bulbous part with the left and right lines there, and shade it. Then it looks really droopy. And of course you can also have that same kind of droopy look, but you have to be careful not to cover the pupil if you want it to look sexy. You know how sometimes girls will kind of drop the eyelids way down, and sometimes their eyelashes will cover their entire eye, and you can go for that kind of look. But the other one, if you kind of don't want them to look tired, the main key is don't cover the pupil with that upper lid. So droop it down, but just above the pupil, where there's a space between the pupil and the lid, and then you can have this kind of look how funny they look if the eyes are too close together. You can have this kind of tired looking eyes, but it's more of a sexy look. You add a half smile or a crooked smile, and suddenly you get, I'm flirting with you kind of look. But if you pull it down too much, like I did there, say I think the eyes are a little too droopy, and I think I do fix that, then suddenly it looks more like a tired look. It's not so much like sexy. And sometimes sexy is hard to pull off when you want to kind of pull off that flirtatious look. So just giving you a couple tips that might help you draw it better that I've noticed for myself is that little trick I just taught about the eye, the pupil. Don't cover the pupil, or make the eyelashes. Really make the eyes almost all the way closed, but it only looks almost all the way closed because the eyes are really relaxed. So the bottom doesn't move at all. Just that upper lid is relaxed and drooped, and not wrinkly at all. And then you draw the eyelashes to where they're almost covering the entire eye. And I do end up drawing that, and I can't remember if it's in. I think it's in this lesson. I end up doing that. Sorry, I just didn't have anything to say right now. Oftentimes, even when I'm drawing, I'll just kind of mumble or ramble about nothing because there's really nothing to say at that particular time, but anyway, notice if I had that minimalistic approach there for the mouth, it's just kind of a line, kind of a smirk, and then a little bit of a hint of that bottom lip. And I can't remember what expression I'm drawing here. Because I don't think I'm still drawing sexy. Maybe I am still on sexy. I don't know. We'll see. I think maybe I am. And right now, that smile looks more kind of like an evil grin, doesn't it? But if you really change the eyes and make those eyes look like sexy, suddenly that expression, that crooked smile, will look like flirtatious rather than, I'm going to bite your ear off because I'm Mike Tyson. I'm like, Tyson, I'll bite the ear off. I'll bite it off. That guy is funny sometimes. Hopefully he doesn't go watch this course and want to come punch me out or something. So here you kind of have it. Now notice how I raise the eyebrows a little bit, and it's kind of like raise the eyebrows up and lower the lids, and suddenly I get this kind of, hey, I'm flirting look. Now that smile doesn't look so evil. It doesn't look so menacing. It doesn't look like I have some evil plan, but now it starts to look like, hey, I kind of like the way your butt looks. I kind of like your smile. Like, it's more of a flirtatious smile now. So it's amazing. The eyes, I'm telling you, the eyes are the main key. You can change any kind of mouth, just about, it seems, to seem like it's means something else by just simply changing the eyes. You can tell she's kind of flirting, but the eyelid, I think, is too much for a more realistic comic look. Notice for that cartoon character look, drawing those, the lid, the whole little lines on the left and right hand side of the lid and shading and everything, it kind of adds to it. But when you draw it for more of a comic-y look, it doesn't seem to work as well. Maybe the little lines like that might work. We gotta be careful. Okay, so now I'm going to try to lower the lids a little bit to where they kind of look, I'm kind of dropping my eyes a little bit, looking sexy, but I'm not quite covering the pupil. And also leaving that bottom part open will help the eye not look so tired as well. And then finally, really, you probably want, unless you're doing more of a bigger eye cartoon look, you're going to want to erase most likely all of that there, all of the lid, or whatever that part's called. Just kind of erase all that. Don't make it look so closed, but do kind of droop the eye a little bit, just not too much, and just play around with it. Droop the eyes in different ways. Try covering the pupil just to see what it looks like, and then try to not cover the pupil. Show lid, don't show lid. Try raising the eyebrows up. That helps too. Even with a more realistic drawing, raise the eyebrows up and then lower the lids, and that's kind of a more, hey baby. I think that's the main sign of flirting, is that you raise the eyebrows up a little bit and then droop the eyes, kind of like I did more with that bottom left-hand picture there with the cartoon character. Now, I should have actually did that with the realistic character, But oh well. I still do think I draw the eyes where they're almost all the way closed too, but show the eyelashes almost covering the eye. But still, even when you do that, raise the eyebrows. And I must be lacking oxygen to my brain or something, because I'm like yawning like crazy here. So when you have this kind of S look to the, where the inner part of the eyebrow is up and the outer part of the eyebrow is down, it's kind of a solemn look, or you get a kind of a, either kind of a puppy dog eyed, oh, feel sorry for me, boo hoo, you know, that kind of pouty look. So pouty can be very, very cool emotion to express in your comic book characters. So for all you wondering, you know, what's my next courses that are going to be available, I'm really trying to come out with courses more often. I know it's been like months since I had my last course, the Master the Human Form, but I'm just letting you know the other courses that I've been working on. One that I've been working on for a while now, and it's just about done. It's all about rendering the videos now, and that is a course on tattooing. And I just teach everything I've learned in apprenticing and over the years of experience. 3 years of professional experience now tattooing, and I apprentice also in Napa, California. So I have a lot to teach, I think, and I teach in such a way, as those of you that like my teaching style, I think I teach in such a way that just makes sense. It's a way that makes sense to me, and hopefully it makes sense to a lot of you. I think a lot of you guys like my teaching style, and so I teach tattooing the same way, and I think you're going to come out of that course. Now I know you'll come out of that course being able to tattoo. Once you have a little bit of practice and stuff, you'll be like, wow, what an eye opener. And you'll be able to take your line work to a new level and finally start doing lines that look nice, you know, that don't feel all scratchy looking or dotty or spotty and so forth. So here, you know, I gave her eyes that really kind of pouty look. So that's one course, like I said, I have been working on right now, and it's going to be available soon. And another course that I haven't even started recording as of yet. Maybe by the time you watch this, I'll be recording it. But I imagine this. You just look at the date that this course was made available, or that this, you know, the trailer for this course was put on my YouTube channel. And I will be doing the form course probably within the next couple months after that. I don't know how long it's going to take me to record it. It probably won't be nearly as long of a course. I don't think it's going to be 10 hours. I'm expecting more like 5 hours, but we'll see. But it's going to be one of the most useful courses you can take. Or buy rather from me. I recommend. In fact, I would recommend buying the course on form and structure, and I might even add perspective to it. Just depends how long it gets. But that course will be the first course someone should buy before they buy anything else, unless they already feel like they've learned form and structure so well, you know, they got that down already. Now it's just like, hey, I just kind of want to learn how to draw the human head now. Then, you know, buy the human head course. But if you don't know form, it's really so important. Form and perspective is like, it's so vitally important. I can't even begin. You won't be able to ever shade from your mind realistically if you don't understand form. Form is what defines everything that looks real. Everything that has shading to it, light and shadow, all comes down to form. It's the same thing. Light and shadow is form. Form is light and shadow. They go hand in hand, and that course will be so important. So, you know, if you've been trying to do my other courses and you don't have a good handle on form, then you're probably able to draw kind of cool, blank, cartoon character looking. The only reason why I say cartoon characters, everything might be realistic. The contours and everything might be realistic looking, realistic proportions and all that, but there's no shading. You don't know how to shade it correctly, and therefore it doesn't look realistic. It just it looks cool like a comic book character, but it doesn't have this realism to it. And to get that realism into your drawings, dynamic lighting, it takes knowing form. And the whole course is going to be about dynamic lighting and form and structure and all that. And so that's another one I'm working on. Another one I had in the mix for a while now, and I haven't started yet, just so you kind of know where I'm going. And notice how you take notice the eyes, and I'm going to go back to the next course in a second, but notice the eyes here. What I've done with the eyes is I simply took solemn eyes or the pouty eyes, and I just kind of made one a little bit raised up higher than the other, and then I opened the eyes up a little bit. So now the person doesn't look, they no longer look like sad, or oh, look at me, I'm so sad, I want a new car, puppy dog pouty eyes, my sister punched me in the face, mommy, to a kind of worried look. So to get that worried look, simply take the pouty eyes, so the eyebrow shape where you can, the inner is up and the outer part of the eyebrow is down, as you can see there to the left. And then just pop one more open than the other, just to add a little bit more dynamicness to it, more movement to it. I know dynamic literally means movement, but in this case it's a still image, so it's not moving, but it kind of adds like the sense of movement to it, is what I'm trying to say. And so by doing that, the eyes suddenly look worried, and obviously pop the eyes open a little bit, and you can just give them little tiny pupils, and they look even more worried. And in a realistic drawing, just kind of open the eye to where there's white all the way around the color part of the eye, the iris. So just yeah, I think that's what it's called, or retina, iris. The colored part, the muscles there. I always forget. I know the pupil's the black dot, and then what is it, the iris or retina? I think maybe those are the same thing. I don't know. Maybe retina's in the iris. I can't remember the anatomy of the eye. The names is so good. Right. So as I was saying, you can really get this scared look by just simply taking that solemn look and popping the eyes open. Now if you exaggerate even more, really pop those eyes open, make that pupil small, and you can actually get away with this even if you're doing realistic comic book, like where everyone looks more realistic, like in Wolverine, for example. Not Wolverine, excuse me, in X-Men. You can go ahead and, well, I guess there's also just Wolverine comic books too, so yeah. Anyway, even if you're sticking with that more realistic look, you can really exaggerate the eyes and really pop them open way bigger than anyone ever could pop their eyes open. And you can even extend the mouth out. It just depends on style. You can like extend that mouth out way beyond the head shape, and so you draw the head shape first, and then you draw the mouth extending outside of it, and just erase wherever the head shape was. And you can do that and get away with it too. I wouldn't recommend doing that in something like Wolverine, but in a style like this here, these kind of cartoon styles, kind of more of American manga mix, you can easily get away with it, and it's no big deal. But you want to be careful how much you stretch the mouth. You don't want to stretch it too much. But notice by really exaggerating that look, he looks that much more scared. So you just exaggerate everything more, distort everything more. That is, make the mouth bigger. It's kind of the same thing you had before. Make it a little bit bigger. Maybe instead of making the teeth grinded, you can make the mouth open like they're screaming, or still grind the teeth. It's just up to you. Show more gum or something. Make the like they're chattering their teeth almost. You can even add little movement of lines to show that. Basically, just take cues from animation. In animation, there'll be many frames where the character's eyes pop way out of their head, and you can get away with that even in a Disney cartoon where everything looks more realistic. It's not so much like Looney Tunes or anything. Of course, you don't want to exaggerate too much, but those few frames make a big difference, and you can have those frames in your comic book, and people will accept it, especially if it's more of a cartoony kind of look anyway. But if it's more realistic look, you have to be careful how much you exaggerate it. Otherwise, people might be, that's no longer Wolverine. Wolverine wouldn't do it. Make sure it fits the character. Would Wolverine ever get scared like that? No. So you probably wouldn't draw that kind of face on him. But yeah, so notice how much more scared he looks. And all I did was I just popped the eyes open more. The eyebrows kind of stayed the same pretty much. Or actually, I even made them more straight even. And then one eye is bigger than the other. I think that adds a cool effect. And then just pop the mouth open bigger, and make it look like he's biting down even harder by showing a little bit more teeth. And then suddenly you have this like really freaked out, scared look. And if you go with more of a Disney look, you'll notice that even with Disney look, like what's that big guy's name in I can't remember his name, Brock or something, in The Prince's New Groove, or The Emperor's New Groove, sorry. I believe that's Disney, isn't it? I'm pretty positive it looks like Disney. Anyway, in that cartoon or that movie, I think there's a guy named Brock, the big dumb guy, and he has this kind of look what I'm going to be drawing right now. And it's kind of a realistic look, but it's kind of its own look too. It's its own style. It just depends on what you choose to exaggerate, what you choose to minimalize, and what you choose to distort is how you're going to get different styles. And one thing cool about that Disney style is it kind of looks realistic in its own way, but it's also cartoony. It's kind of a neat, interesting style. It's its own style. It's come to be its own thing. It's evolved into its own thing. But a lot of the characters still look really realistic in Disney stuff. But if you just slightly change the shape of the eye and stuff, you get a different style. Anyway, this kind of shape here of the eye is kind of neat. But by just drawing that little pupil, and if you want to draw a little bit of color around it to get more of a realistic eyeball, notice that you still have it wide open. It looks really wide open as long as you keep a lot of white around it. So do that typical S curve there for the eyebrows. And we're going to get this really weird look on a really big character. And so this particular character, I think it matches him. But someone like Wolverine, it's not going to match. I'm not drawing any character in particular. I'm not drawing that guy from Princess New Groove. I'm just kind of keeping that sort of cartoon style and something similar to that. The nose will be really detailed and more realistic than a comic book nose, so it's not minimalized really. It kind of keeps that realistic look to it. And it's kind of an upshot, so you're going to see. And I never really like upshots so much because I don't like showing it. It's really hard not to have that piggy look to the nose when even realistic, from a photograph. It's very rare you want to take a photograph looking up at someone like that because you really don't want their nostrils showing. It's not the most pleasing photo to take of someone. And same reasons, it's not the most pleasing drawing to make of someone or of your character. And you want to try to minimize the nose, and you can do that. In real life, you can't really do that unless you Photoshop it. But basically, just kind of minimize how detailed the nose looks from the upshot. Draw the nostrils even smaller and stuff like that, and you can make it look more pleasing. But by really, stretching this mouth out, even in a more kind of a realistic, caricature. Oh my gosh, that word's hard to say. Anyway, for me at least, some words are tongue twisters for me. So anyway, you can still get that really exaggerated look, even a more realistic character. So feel free to experiment. Don't feel limited. Think of it this way: no one's going to see the drawing if you don't show it to anyone, and if you do, you could just throw it away. So don't feel scared to experiment. And the only reason why I mention that is because I know there were times when I felt like scared to experiment. I didn't really know it at the time, but looking back I realized, hey, I think I was scared to experiment. I just kind of stuck with what I knew and stuff, and I didn't really experiment much. It's like, hey, experiment. There's nothing wrong with it. If it doesn't look good, it doesn't look good. Just throw it away. Start over. You'll gain something by it. It's like, hey, let's go ahead and pop these eyes open more. Let's pop one eye open, one eye closed, and what kind of expression will I get? Even though I erased that character, you should still draw it as part of the exercise. Because drawing different kinds of characters and stuff really helps develop your skills and your imagination. It develops neural networks of information you can tap into later. And that little piece of information that was in that certain expression, in that certain kind of style of face, you'll end up applying it elsewhere without even realizing it. And doing it over and over repetition, that's why I have you draw it from reference, draw it from memory, draw it from reference, draw it from memory, and go back and forth like that until you can master it from memory, because that repetition is what builds the information bank in your brain and puts it in there for a long term so that you can tap into this information and draw from your mind much more efficiently. So notice the exaggeration of this character. So if you start with a more realistic face, right? The exaggeration of this character then is, of course, the cheekbones. We're going to make them angled and really pop out and push into the face. The jaw, really angled, really popped out, really big. Now, granted, there are some people that have jaws that just stick out crazy like that, and they look kind of weird, but they're not gonna be pointy like that. So that's a stylistic choice. Adding those little points to the cheek and to the jaw there, and really popping the jaw up big, gives this character his own unique style. It's its own look. And then you give him that big chin. So you can actually start with a very realistic face and just add those few little exaggerations and distortions, and suddenly you have a new style. It's like, hey, that's really, that's how simple style is. It's really that simple. And then it's like, hey, instead of giving him realistically shaped eyes, what if I give him these kind of triangle eyes? It's kind of a triangle, right? A soft edge triangle. And then suddenly I have something that's like, hey, that's Disney, isn't it? Look how easy it is to come up with one of Disney's styles. It's just that simple. You know, one of Disney's characters. Many of the characters follow that kind of example from, Heracles, the Disney version of Heracles, or Hercules, the Romanization of that word. Greek is Heracles. Little snippet informations here and there that I dropped, kind of funny. That's totally unrelated to art, anyway. So, yeah. You'll see that kind of look in a lot of the characters in Disney. And that's all they did, is just, it's really, you choose what to exaggerate, what to minimalize, what to distort. It's like, hey, what if I keep the nose realistic looking as far as the details and stuff goes, but what if I make the nose really big, just really exaggerate my noses in all my characters, and that can be a style in of itself. Or just one character. With females, you'll notice the main things that get the style of Disney is sometimes the eyes will change depending on what cartoon they're drawing. They might have this kind of look to the eyes, kind of more of an oval look to the eye instead of a realistic look. But typically you'll have a realistic look on females of the eye. But what happens, the eyes will be bigger than normal, nose will be more petite than normal, and the chin will be more thin and petite and shorter, so it's not in realistic proportions. It looks realistic because there's not all this complicated shade, realistic shading. So if you take a drawing of a real person, or take a photograph of a real person like Jessica Alba, simply trace over the photo just the lines, just the lips, nose, and eyes, and face, chin, jaw, and all that, but nothing else. You'll note that if you turn off the photograph and just look at the line work that you did, the chin looks big. Looks like there's a lot of white space there, and that's because there's not all that shading to make it look like a normal chin. So because of that, if you try to draw a cartoon of Jessica Alba without any shading, you're going to have to draw her chin smaller, and it'll actually look more like her. It's kind of weird. So that's one thing that's Disney does for their females, and that's their style. So by simply reducing the whole jaw and chin on the female to make it come higher and thinner, and then reducing the nose size to where it's much thinner and not nearly as exaggerated. It depends on the cartoon too. You can still get very realistic looking as far as the details of the nose, just make it very thin and petite, like unrealistically thin and petite, but still realistic in all of its shapes. And then change the eyes, make them a little bit bigger, and suddenly you have a typical kind of Disney look of the character. So here's more of a forward look. Notice how the forward look seems to lose something, but sometimes the forward look is necessary. Just have that straight on dead look, especially if someone's like a zombie. Sometimes that straight on dead look. See, notice how I say that straight on dead look? It fits the zombie, right? Because it is kind of dead from the front view like that. And so it does have its places, it does have its uses, but typically you're going to be drawing from different angles of the face, like different 3/4, some more extreme than others, like turning the head sideways. And sideways views you'll use for certain things, especially it's really cool for like one person yelling at another person. And it can really just have that nice effect of that side view, or profile if you want to call it profile. And then of course the back views, where you don't really see much of the face at all, and those are cool for like one person's talking to the other person, and it's just a kind of a neat camera effect. Kind of ominous when you see the back of a character looking over a city or something. You kind of see the very little bit of the side of his face. You can't see his nose or anything. So that's that really freaked out look. So you can also try experimenting with raising the eyebrows completely up. Don't even add the S curve to them, but that won't make them look so much worried. It'll just make them look just downright freaked out. So give them the high raised curved eyebrows, eyes popped open, and a scared looking face, and then suddenly you get oh cool. And suddenly you get something very different looking. You get well, not very very different looking, but get them looking really freaked out and scared. Right, so at this point here, it's just about the exercises you'll be doing. That's what I was originally talking about. I don't know how I lost the sound in the video in the first place, but I think this sound is more in depth for some reason, because I was able to talk about other stuff that I didn't talk about before. But yeah, what I'm talking about there with the eyes is that make sure, I've already gone over it, just make sure your eyes are both facing the same direction, the same distance away from the outer inner edge. Right, so that's it. You know what to do for the lessons already. Same stuff. You want to draw all the faces that you saw me draw in this video, one by one, and master them by going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you can draw it from your mind, and then you're done with the exercises for this lesson. Really do the exercises, folks. I'm telling you, the exercises is where you'll see your difference. It's where you'll see your improvement. And it's where you'll finally start seeing when you're in class and you're bored, you'll be able to draw this really cool looking expression and face from your memory without any references whatsoever. And it feels so free to draw like that from your mind. I just can't express how awesome it is. In fact, I kind of gave up on drawing for a while because I couldn't really draw that much stuff from my mind very good. And so I just kind of gave up because it was all just about drawing what I can see, and I got bored with it. But once I was able to draw from my mind and create stuff, oh, I draw all the time now. I just, all the time I draw. I love it. It's so freeing. So thank you for watching this lesson.